Allah. Praise be to God, وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. Bear witness there is no God, there is no purpose. He's the one God, there is no other God beside him, nor of all secrets and declarations. He is the most gracious, most merciful. He is the one God, there is no other God besides him, the King, the most sacred, the peace, the most faithful, the supreme, the almighty, the most powerful, the most dignified. God be glorified far above having any partners. So if you see here, it's interesting that it's mentioned twice that he's the one God. So we see in 22 it says he's the one God. Then in 23 again it says he's the one God. Then in 24 again it says he's the one God. The creator, the initiator, the designer. To him belong the most beautiful names. Glorifying him with everything in the heavens and the earth. He's the Almighty, most wise. So what does it mean he is the one God? I remember before I became a submitter, and when I used to think about, well, he's the one God, everybody's saying he's the one God. Well, I used to think, well, we all know he's the one God, so it's almost like stating the obvious. But now, as submitters, we understand what that really means, because anything could be our God, right? And then even religious entities and figures that we consider to be holy, they can become our gods too. And that's what happened in religion throughout history, as we know. So that having another God beside God is obviously, idol worship, and Quran tells us that idol worship is not very intelligent. Surah 16, verse 72. And God made for you spouses from among yourselves, and produced for you from your spouses children and grandchildren, and provided you with good provisions. Should they believe in falsehood and turn unappreciative of God's blessings? Idol worship, not very intelligent. Yet they worship beside God, what possesses no provisions for them in the heavens nor on earth, nor can provide them with anything. So God tells us the idol worship is not very intelligent. Why? Because these idols have not provided us with anything. Everything that we have, the spouses, the children, the provisions, all the blessings on earth that we have are all given to us by God. And so the reason why it's injustice is because imagine if you cared for someone all your life, you gave them everything, only for them to grow up and thank someone else, right? That's the closest analogy I'd say. Still not very accurate, but this is what it is, and so when we think about it, that's the whole purpose of our existence in this world. We can do all the righteous works in this life, but if we're not worshiping God alone, all of those works are going to be nullified. On the other hand, if we are worshiping God alone, and in the process, we end up committing sins, obviously God can overlook a lot of those sins and forgive us for worshiping Him alone, because at least you fulfilled your main purpose in life. The whole reason for being here in this world is so we can worship God alone. God tells us that idol worship is the mother of all evil. And when you say it's the mother of all evil, that means that it gives birth to all types of sins. And the Quran tells us, how that happens. Basically, if we think about everything that's going on in this world right now, all the bad things that are happening, they're all happening as a result of idol worship in one way or another. Either people are idolizing other saints or prophets, and they're killing in the name of their idols, or there's people that are idolizing their ego or money or drugs or anything like that, and they're committing all kinds of sins because of that. So anything that we see, really, idol worship is giving birth to all of them, because we're all worshiping Satan by doing that. You're either worshiping God or you're worshiping Satan. There's really no in between. God says in Surah 14, verse 28, they remove their families from God's protection. Have you noted those who responded to God's blessings by disbelieving, and thus brought disaster upon their own families? Hell is their destiny, wherein they burn. What a miserable end. Idol worship, the mother of all evil. They set up rivals to rank with God, and to divert others from his path. Say enjoy for a while, your final destiny is hell. So these verses may seem a bit harsh, but rightfully so, because this is the purpose of this test. If we fail to worship God alone, basically that's what we would expect. God, as merciful as it is, is willing to forgive all of our sins, provided we worship Him alone and not set up any idols to rival Him. But people who set up idols to rank with God, they don't normally just set it up and be content with it. They set up these idols, and then they try to divert others from His path as well. It's like you become an agent of Satan. Now you have to go and convince other people to do the same. And it's like we've all seen like those pyramid schemes that people sell, right? And it's kind of like that. You have this pyramid, people worshiping Satan and then going and spreading it, and then it's like a pyramid. You convert other people, and then you end up incurring the sin of converting other people. And that's why God says that each one of them receives double. So idol worship, so now that we know that idol worship is that bad, we understand some of these other commandments that God has mentioned as well. 9:17 states, the idol worshippers are not to frequent the masjids of God while confessing their disbelief. They have nullified their works, and they will abide forever in hell. The only people to frequent God's masjids are those who believe in God in the last day and observe the contact prayer salat, and give the obligatory charity zakat, and do not fear except God. These will surely be among the guided ones. So now that we understand how bad idol worship is, we understand God's commandment, why God has put this commandment in place, because God said that the idol worshippers are actually polluted, and if they're frequenting the masjid of God while they're confessing their disbelief, they will first they have nullified their works and they're basically going to hell. But they're also should be prevented from coming to the masjid of God, because they're there to divert other people. And so God says the only people who should be frequenting God's masjids, who are to frequent God's masjids, are those who believe in God in the last day and observe the contact prayer salat and give the obligatory charity zakat, and do not fear except God, and God will guide these people. So these basic principles, as frequenters of masjids of God, have to be in place for us to be guided. Then God talks about masjids that oppose God and His messenger. 9:107 says, there are those who abuse the masjid by practicing idol worship, dividing the believers, and providing comfort to those who oppose God and His messenger. They solemnly swear our intentions are honorable. God bears witness that they are liars. And the footnote says that any masjid where the practices are not devoted absolutely to God alone belongs to Satan, not God. For example, mentioning the names of Abraham, Muhammad, and or Ali in the Azan and or Salat prayers violates God's commandments in 2:136, 2:285, 3:4, 2:8. Unfortunately, this is a common idolatrous practice throughout the corrupted Muslim world. And so, if you think about it, we're truly blessed by God to have a masjid where we come and without mentioning any idols like Abraham, Muhammad, or Ali. All the masjids, majority of them in the world, are polluted and plagued with idol worship. And there are people in these masjids that, as this verse informs us, that they solemnly swear their intentions are honorable. but all they do is divide the believers. It's nothing good, right? It says they divide the believers, they comfort those who oppose God and His messenger, and God says they're liars because they're attributing the most horrendous lies to God. And then the commandment for us is obviously to not pray naturally, is to not pray in those masjids. God says you shall never pray in such a masjid that is established on the basis of righteousness from the first day is more worthy of your praying therein. And if there are people who love to be purified, God loves those who purify themselves. Is one who establishes his building on the basis of reverencing God and to gain His approval better, or one who establishes his building on the brink of a crumbling cliff that falls down with him into the fire of hell? God does not guide the transgressing people. Okay? So, a masjid that is established on the basis of righteousness from the first day is more worthy for us to pray. And we should never pray in a masjid that practices our worship. And you can actually try that. I wouldn't try it again, but I remember one time when I first became a submitter, I actually, I wasn't in the US, I was in Pakistan, and I knew about the commandment, and I was like thinking maybe, I was just running late, and I was like, I had my dad's car, I was in, so I was like, I need to return this car, and I need to hurry up. So I was like, okay, there's a masjid here, why don't I just pray here? Does it save me like 5-10 minutes? So my dad's probably not going to get upset or something. I forgot what exactly it was. I wanted to save a few minutes, and and I remember I went and I did my prayer, and then as soon as I came out, like I got distracted and I slammed into the car in front of me. So things like that really, I think, will happen. We know bad things happen as a consequence. So we are expected to uphold God's commandments, no matter what. We cannot compromise these for any reasons. So, and it says here that such a building that they have established remains a source of doubt in their hearts until their hearts are stilled. God is omniscient, most wise. And the reason why such a building remains a source of doubt is because that's what it promotes. It promotes doubts about God's revelations and God's omnipotence and the oneness of God, because it continues to promote the idea of other idols. Those ideas could be subtle or could be obvious, but obviously they're promoting worshiping of other than God. God tells us that the believers are willing to go to any lengths for the sake of God. They're not people pleasers. The believers, God says the believers are fearless, and they're willing to, and it sounds extreme, but they're willing to kill and get killed in the cause of God. So they're willing to sacrifice their own lives for the sake of God. And that's what truly God's love is, right? If you're a believer and you love God the most, you're willing to do anything. If you really love anybody, imagine like you're in love with someone, and truly, you would do anything for that person, and that holds true for God. And this is mentioned in 9:111, the most profitable investment. God has brought from the believers their lives and their money in exchange for paradise. Thus they fight in the cause of God, willing to kill and get killed. Such is the truthful pledge in the Torah, the Gospel, and the Quran. And who fulfills its pledge better than God? They shall rejoice in making such an exchange. This is the greatest triumph. So let's repent now. Before we do that, let's remember not to do extra prostration. Alhamdulillah, praise be to God, wa shukru ala Allah, Every God should be cut off. Bear witness there is one God but God. There's no purpose. Okay. So the second part of my sermon talks about opposing God and His messengers, because we saw earlier about these people that practice idol worship, is that they're actually, these masjids, they're actually opposing God and His messenger. They're comforting those who oppose God and His messenger. So what does God talk about opposing God and His messengers? God says in 33:57, surely those who oppose God and His messenger, God afflicts them with a curse in this life, and the hereafter He has prepared for them a shameful retribution. These are very strong verses. 58:20 says, surely those who oppose God and His messenger will be with the lowliest. So what does it mean to oppose God and His messenger? Well, you don't have to do a whole lot. If you go against the teachings of God and His messenger, you're actually opposing them, because you're going against them. If you're ignorant, that would be different. But if you are knowingly doing it, you're disregarding them after being reminded, then you're opposing God and His messenger. And God tells us in 58:22 to run for our lives. 58:22. You will not find people who believe in God and the last day befriending those who oppose God and His messenger, even if they were their parents, or their children, or their siblings, or their tribe. For these He decrees faith into their hearts, and supports them with inspiration from Him, and He admits them into gardens with flowing streams, wherein they abide forever. God is pleased with them, and they are pleased with Him. These are the party of God. Most assuredly, God's party are the winners. So, this is not very easy. Befriending people. You could not befriend people who oppose God and His messenger, for sure, right? But then, when it comes to these people being your parents, or your children, or your siblings, or your tribe, etc., that is a test that is harder, much harder. But God tells us that the believers, Quran tells us that the believers consistently make the right choice. But why is it? Why is it that we have to run for our life? Run for your life is a rather very strong subtitle to put over here. It's almost like there's some sort of contagious disease going around that you have to really run for your life. You don't have to literally run for your life, but in the most literal sense, but you really have to in a metaphorical way, because this is God's law. God tells us to force ourselves to be with the believers, and the way, because there's a mechanism behind it. It's God's system. But if you force yourself to be with the believers, they'll rub off on you. If you force yourself to be with the disbelievers or people who oppose God and His messenger, they will rub off on you and you become like them. So we have to be careful. 59:4. This is because they oppose God and His messenger. For those who oppose God and His messenger, God is most strict in enforcing retribution. Do not befriend hypocrites. Or you believe, do not befriend outsiders who never wish to see you harm. They even wish to see you suffer. Hatred flows out of their mouths, and what they hide in their chests is far worse. This clarify the revelation for you, if you understand. God tells us, basically, if they say they believe, but they're opposing God and His messenger, meaning they're hypocrites, then do not befriend them either. It says, here you are loving them while they do not love you. And you believe in all the scripture. When they meet you, they say they believe, but as soon as they leave, they bite their fingers out of rage towards you. Say, die in your rage. God is fully aware of the innermost thoughts. When anything good comes your way, they hurt, and when anything bad happens to you, they rejoice. If you steadfastly persevere and maintain righteousness, their schemes will never hurt you. God is fully aware of everything you do. No matter how, God does not guide them. No matter how hard you try to guide them, God does not guide the ones He had committed to strain. Thus, no one can help them. A chip on their shoulders. So God tells us that these are the real enemies. When you see them, you may be impressed by their looks, And when they speak, you may listen to their eloquence. They are like standing rocks. They think that every cause is intended against them. These are the real enemies. Beware of them. God condemns them. They have deviated. When they are told, "Come, let the messenger of God pray for your forgiveness," they mockingly turn their heads, and you see them repel others and act arrogantly. So these are some of the signs that God has provided for us, and all this happens. Even people who oppose God and His messenger, it happens because they have idols in their life. That it could be their ego, it could be other idols. It could even be people that they love, who they might start idolizing, and so basically these are strong verses for us to remember that it's important for us to put God first and foremost in our lives, and obey God and His messengers, and not to follow the path of Satan. So God willing, we can all make it, and on the day of judgment, we will not be remorseful. We will be thankful and appreciative to God for guiding us in the right path and forgive us.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله